Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with a little bit of esoterica, a little bit of ancient lore. Today we are beginning an exploration of the works of Henry Cornelius Agrippa, Knight. We are beginning with the three books of occult philosophy, or of magic. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points brought to light by the text. It is not the format for everyone, but people do find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, along with the original source material and the link and the link for my book where I teach you to do magic responsibly so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, we are going to dive in and begin our exploration of the three books of occult philosophy, or of magic, from Henry Agrippa, with book one. Now, these chapters are divided differently, right? The whole setup is different. It's not going to be one chapter per video unless it is exceptionally long. But book one is like 700. So I don't know where the break off is going to be. We'll just take it and wing it as we go. I'll try to keep these around an hour. All right, chapter one. How magicians collect virtues from the threefold world is declared in these three books. Seeing there is a threefold world, elementary, celestial, and intellectual, and every inferior is governed by its superior and receiveth the influence of the virtues thereof, so that the very original, the chief worker of all doth by angels, the heavens, stars, elements, animals, plants, metals, and stones, convey from himself the virtues of his omnipotency upon us, for whose service he made and created all of these things. Wise men conceive it in no way irrational that it should be possible for us to ascend by these same degrees through each world to the same very original world itself, the maker of all things, the first cause from whence all things are and proceed, and also to enjoy not only these virtues, which are already in the more excellent kind of things, but also, besides these, to draw new virtues from above. Now, let's pause and talk. Right. First off, straight off the top, I don't believe in the threefold world in the way that it is understood by most of the people who work magic. That is something that I am different about, and I am perfectly fine with being different about it. I have results. I have produced healing within myself directly. I have asked God to heal me. He showed me how to heal myself. I used it, and it worked. And I relay that. That's what my book is about. That's what the playlist for the members is about. I have done something. It had nothing to do with a threefold world whatsoever. Now, you can look at the world of thought as a separate place. It might be, it might not be. You can look at the world of spirituality as a separate place. It might be, it might not be. The assumption that is being made is that it is, that there is another unseen world. And while it is possible, it's not a guarantee. Even if there is a eternal, right? I do believe that life is eternal. Like your mortal coil, not eternal. The soul that resides within this 5D navigation device, absolutely eternal. It came from somewheres, it returned somewheres. But I believe that is here, right? We go back to the eternity that is God, and it might be in a different dimension, but it might not. It might be right here. And therefore, this is an assumption. This is something that may be true, but we don't have any reason to believe that it is. It is a natural course through the logic of time that people would come to this conclusion, but it is not necessarily a logical conclusion that they came to. Right? The analogies do hold. As above, so below. It holds in great part for almost everything. That is the reason why we make that assumption. I have a different reason for the as above, so below. See the playlist, and they will tell you, right? But you bring them into accordance to perform manifestation, which is what I'm talking about when I say that I have done something. None of that was predicated by the necessity of believing in a threefold world. Celestial, intellectual, or elementary. Now, we live in the elementary world. The stars are also in the elementary world. That would be celestial. Intellectual can very well be differentiated, but it does not necessarily have to be. And so, right off the top, right, this is something that I do not come into accordance with. It is not that it is not true, it is just that it has not been verified to be true. And I have done things on the positive side with no negative repercussions without any of that, right? In the same way that I tell you the ceremonies aren't necessary, it's the investment of energy. The same way that I tell you that the tools aren't necessary, it's the investment of energy. It's the same with this, right? It's not necessary to believe that the threefold world is there. You can, but it's not a necessity. I do believe in the maker. I do believe in the first cause, right? Those are God, right? And so I do believe in that. I do not believe in heaven and hell, right? Mainly because they're not biblical, right? If you read through the Old Testament, you won't find a reference to hell. You won't. You won't find a reference to heaven either. You'll find the land of the dead where everybody goes, which is in accordance with what I believe, right? We came from source, we return to source. We're here for the experience. All right, back to the text. Hence it is that they seek after the virtues of the elementary world, with the help of psychic and natural philosophy and the various mixations of natural things, then of the celestial world and the rays and influences thereof, according to the rules of astrologers and the doctrines of mathematicians, joining the celestial virtues to the former. Moreover, they ratify and confirm all of these powers with diverse intelligences through the sacred ceremonies of religion. The order and process of all these I shall endeavor to deliver in these 3 books, where of the first contains natural magic, the second celestial, and the third ceremonial. But I know not whether it be an unpardonable presumption in me that I, a man of so little judgment and learning, should, in my very youth, so confidently set upon a business so difficult, so hard and intricate as this. This is. Wherefore, whatsoever things have here already and shall afterwards be said by me, I would not have any one assent to them, nor shall I myself, any farther than they shall be approved of by the universal church and the congregation of the faithful. So, I didn't do the history of Agrippa. I was going to. I actually recorded almost an hour and a half, and I still had half of the material to do from this particular book. So I decided not to. But the long and the short of it is that a man named Agrippa was very honorable. He was very truthful, and he sought knowledge with all of his heart, even when it led him to places that it was not necessarily truthful to be in. He was, however, confounded by the beliefs and doctrines of the time. This was contemporary with Martin Luther. The church was losing its authority. People were being burned as witches with some great calamity, which is a natural outflowing from the Catholic Church if you actually look at anything that they do. But he had a continuous contention with the church, right? He did this, which was a magical work, and later on he went back to the church, but not in necessarily the same spirit as we saw with Mr. Levi. What we see here is that he was just succumbing to the demands of the times, right? It wasn't a loss of faith. Even when he was doing the Christian things, he was still playing with this, which is definitely against the rules. He was a supporter of Martin Luther, and the fact that this was by the universal church tells you where he was coming from, not necessarily where he would end up. Now, I didn't reach the end of it, so I don't know where he wound up. It may be that he went back to the Catholic Church in much the same way that Mr. Levi did, but I doubt it. All right, chapter 2. What magic is, what are the parts thereof, and how the professors thereof must be qualified. Magic is a faculty of wonderful virtue, full of the most high mysteries, containing the most profound contemplation of most secret things, together with the nature, power, quality, substance, and virtues thereof, as also the knowledge of whole nature, and it doth instruct us concerning the differing, the agreement of things amongst themselves, whence it produceth its wonderful effects. By uniting the virtues of things through the application of them one to the other, and to their inferior suitable subjects, joining and knitting them together thoroughly by the powers and virtues of the superior bodies. Now, it's important to note here, right? I have a whole video called the virtues and vices, the 8 facets of God, where we talk about the intrinsic virtues, right? That we have hope and despair, sloth and diligence, pride and humility, greed and charity, gluttony and temperance, lust and chastity, love and wrath. These are things that we are meant to balance in our life, not cleave to either side. He's talking about something completely different when he is referencing virtues, so I'm not going to bother trying to be like pedantic about it and try and correct the terminology. Virtues in this case is the major aspects, right? This glass, one of the virtues is it's tough, it's hard, right? It's made out of glass, it can hold liquids. That's another one of its virtues, it can hold the liquids. Virtue in this case is the positive qualities of whatever the thing may happen to be. And so this is different from the spiritual virtues of manifestation, where you need to balance in your life, and is talking about the actual physical characteristics of things. This is the most perfect and chief science, the sacred, the sublimer kind of philosophy, and lastly, the most absolute perfection of all most excellent philosophy. Foreseeing that all regulative philosophy is divided into natural, mathematical, and theological. Natural philosophy teaches the nature of those things which are in the world, searching and inquiring into their causes, effects, times, places, fashions, events, their whole and parts also. The number and nature of those things, called elements, what fire, earth, air forth brings, from whence the heavens their beginnings had, whence tide, whence rainbow in gay colours clad, what makes the clouds that gathered are and black, to send forth lightnings and thunderings crack, what doth the night deflames and comets make, what makes the earth to swell and then to quake, what is seed of metals and of gold, what virtue's wealth does nature's coffers hold. That is interesting, right? Let's talk real quick, because the elements are important, but I do not call upon the elements in any of my practice. Some people do. Now, earth is quite literally the terrestrial, right? Air is the oxygen you breathe. Fire is the element of change, and we will come back to that in real quick. And he doesn't mention water, which is the in-between of the earth and the air. There are 4 elements, right? The 5th being spirit, which is up for debate. I believe. Other people don't have to, right? But fire, earth, air, and water are the 4 elements. Earth is the literal manifestation of things. Air is the things we breathe. But all of it is the Holy Spirit. I talk often. I've got a whole video on it, so I'm not going to get into too much detail here. But before the beginning, there was the divine. And the divine was infinite and without form and as limitless as you could possibly conceive, plus a little bit more. You cannot understand the infinite. It is beyond you. But the infinite decided to limit himself into creation and become all of creation, all at the exact same time. That moment of transition where he went from the infinite into the limited, which he did himself, of creator. That moment is the beginning, that frozen snapshot in time, where everything is created but nothing is yet, right? All of the elements are in existence. Every single element that ever was, will be, is already there. But it's all being real still. There is no movement whatsoever. And so God spoke, and he said, I am the light. And he became the light, and motion began, and thus we have the Logos. The Logos is, quite literally, all of those things, all of those elements, in motion. And therefore, it cannot be a person. It can, I am a manifestation of the Logos. So are you. So are my pets. So are the grass outside and the bugs that are in the grass. All of it is Logos. Every single atom in existence. All of the elements is the Holy Spirit in its wholeness, right? The limited God, God in the infinite, Spirit in the limited. And so the Logos is spirit in motion. What I do is take control of that motion, that spirit in motion. Now, I don't control the whole spirit. I kind of channel it. I use that to create the magical effects that have healed me. And so I'm not just pulling something out of my butt. I am talking about something that I know. Now, in addition to that, what we see, and one of the reasons why I'm bringing this up, the send forth lightnings, the nightly flames, and the comets are all representations of the Logos. The Logos, or the Spirit, exists in two forms, right? There is the inactive form and the active form. The inactive form is the air that is surrounding you right now. It is not doing much of anything on its own. There is some combinations happening, right? Humidity exists, but other than that, there's not really a whole lot of change happening. But if I were to pick up this tool right here, right? This is a lighter. And if I strike that wheel, I am making change happen. My lighter's about dead. I am changing the butane into carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. I am enacting the change. The flame that you see, we'll use a different lighter. That flame that you see right there, that is the spirit. That is the manifestation of Logos. Lightning, when you see that, it's the same thing, right? This air around you is inactive plasma. This is active plasma. Active plasma is a visible sign of the change that is happening, right? This fire is the change happening from the butane becoming carbon dioxide. When lightning happens, that is the change in part happening when the lightning strikes the ground or goes from the ground up, because it does happen in both ways. When that happens, change occurs and you see light. But the light is the manifestation of the change. What is happening is the magnetic bonds between the elements in that particular section of the sky are changing. Some of the water vapor is separating. Some of the individual elements are combining into new compounds. It's a visible sign of the outward change. And so the Spirit indeed sends forth the lightnings and the thundering crack. It sends forth the nightly flames and the comets, right? It makes the earth swell. It's all magnetics. The Holy Spirit is the electromagnetic forces of creation, which I use to manipulate for magical practice. Hopefully that's a little bit clear, but if not, I've got a couple of resources that are linked up top where we talk about that in some extensive detail. Back to the text. All these things doth natural philosophy, the viewer of nature, contain, teaching us according to Virgil's muse. Whence all things flow, whence mankind beast, whence fire, whence rain and snow, whence earthquakes are while the whole ocean beats, over this banks and then again retreats, whence strength of herbs, whence courage, rage of brutes, all kinds of stone, of creeping things, and fruits. Interesting, right? So we got the fifth existence, we got the fourth and third existence, we have the second existence, and we have the first existence, all listed in this one simple poem. But mathematical philosophy teacheth us to know the quantity of natural bodies as extended into three dimensions, and also to conceive of the motion and course of celestial bodies. How the sun doth rule the 12 zodiac signs, the orb that's measured round about with lines. It doth the heaven's starry way make known, and strange eclipses of the sun and moon. Arcturus also, and the stars of rain, the 7 stars likewise, and Charles his wain. Why winter's suns make toward the west and fast? What makes the nights so long ere they be past? All which is understood by mathematical philosophy. Whence by the heavens we may foreknow the seasons all, times to reap and sow, and when 'tis fit to launch into the deep, and when to war, and when in peace to sleep, and when to dig up trees, and them again to set, so that they may bring forth a main. So they may bring forth a main. What does that mean? 5. It doesn't tell you. Okay, now, theological philosophy or divinity teacheth what God is, what the mind and what intelligence, what an angel, what a devil, what a soul, what religion, and what sacred institutions, rites, temples, observations, and sacred mysteries are. That's interesting. It instructs us also concerning faiths, miracles, the virtues of words and figures, the secret operations and mysteries of seals. And, as Apuleius saith, it teaches us rightly to understand and to be skilled in the ceremonial laws, the equity of holy things and rule of religions, but to recollect myself. These three principal faculties magic comprehends, unites, and actuates. Deservedly, therefore, was it by the ancients esteemed as the highest and most sacred philosophy. It was, as we find, brought to light by most sage authors, the most famous writers, amongst which principally Zemloxus and Zoroaster were so famous that many believe they were inventors of this science. Their track, Abaris, the Hyperborean, Charmondas, Damageron, Exodus, Hermippius, followed. There were also other eminent choice men, as Mercurius Trismegistus, Porphyus, Iamblichus, Plotinus, Proculus, Dardanus, Orpheus the Thracian, Gog the Grecian. That is an interesting appellation. Germa the Babylonian, Apollonius of Tyana, Osthenes also wrote excellently in his art, whose books being as it were lost. Democritus of Abdera recovered and set forth his own commentaries. Besides Pythagoras, Empedocles, Democritus, and Plato, and many other renowned philosophers traveled far by sea to learn this art, and, being returned, published it with wonderful devoutness, esteeming of it a great secret. Also it is well known that Pythagoras and Plato went to the prophets of Memphis to learn it, and traveled through almost all Syria, Egypt, Judea, and the schools of the Chaldeans, that they might not be ignorant of the most sacred memorials and records of magic, and also that they might be furnished with divine things. Whosoever therefore is desirous to study in this faculty, if he be not skilled in natural philosophy, wherein are discovered the qualities of things, and in which are found the occult properties of every being, and if he be not skillful in the mathematics and in the aspects and figures of the stars, upon which depends the sublime virtue and property of everything, see the astrology video where I disagree quite heartily with that. And if he be not learned in theology, wherein are manifested these immaterial substances, which dispense and minister all things, he cannot be possibly able to understand the rationality of magic. For there is no work that is done by mere magic, nor is there any work that is merely magical, that doth not comprehend these three faculties. That's going to bring us to chapter 3 of the four elements, their qualities and mutual mixations. There are four elements, the original grounds of all corporeal things: fire, earth, water, air, of which all elemented inferior bodies are compounded, not by way of heaping them up together, but by transmutation and union, and when they are destroyed, they are resolved into elements. For there is none of these sensible elements that is pure, but they are more or less mixed, and apt to be changed one into the other. Even as earth, becoming dirty, and being dissolved, becomes water, and the same, being made thick and hard, becomes earth again, but being evaporated through heat, passeth into air, and that being kindled, passeth into fire. And this, being extinguished, returns back into air, but being cooled again after its burning, becomes earth, or stone, or sulfur. And this is manifested by lightning. Plato also was of that opinion that earth was wholly changeable, and that the rest of the elements are changed, as into this, so into one another successively. That is not incorrect, right? We've read through the works of Plato, not all of them, of course, but several of them. And it was interesting to discover molecular biology in there. It was interesting to discover physics, right? Like, not just a rudimentary understanding, but a more complete understanding than was current in the days of Mr. Agrippa here, right? The writings of Plato talk about the mechanics of the atom and the element in very real terms, And I was quite surprised by that. I wasn't expecting to find that, but we definitely found that contained in the works. And it is not beyond the possibility that Plato understood elemental change in a very fundamental way. But it is important to note that at this point in history, this was in the 1500s, we still had not isolated the elements at all, right? We had at this point discovered that hydrogen was a thing. That was one of the first things we discovered, right? But if you separate water, you can separate the results, and then you get hydrogen and you get oxygen. That is one of the very first alchemical experiments that we have. And so we knew that, but most of the other elements are completely unknown. Like helium, I don't think was even speculated about yet. That later in the 1800s, they were speculating about it, but they still hadn't found it. So it's important to remember contextually that they didn't have the information that we do. They didn't have the idea of the atom, right? The nucleus and the electrons surrounding it. None of that was a thing. But Plato described it fairly accurately, despite the fact that there was no way that he could have done it. Right? There was no telescope, there was no microscope, there was no amplified ocular devices of real value at all. And so it is extraordinarily unusual that he would be able to describe it as accurately as he did. One of the problems being, of course, that he didn't have the terminology to describe what he was seeing other than in the elementals. Back to the text. But it is the opinion of the subtler sort of philosopher that earth is not changed, but relented and mixed with other elements, which do not dissolve it, and that it returns back into itself again. That is because there were so many elements and he didn't know what he was talking about, right? If you don't know that carbon is a thing, it's earth. If you don't know that nickel is a thing, or iron, right? Like in a fundamental way, it's just earth to you, right? The solid things are earth, the gaseous things are gas, of course. Now, every one of the elements hath two special properties, the former whereof it retains as proper to itself, and the other as a mean. It agrees with that which comes next after it. For fire is hot and dry, earth is dry and cold, the water is cold and moist, the air is moist and hot. That creates a very nice cycle. And so, after this manner of the elements, according to the two contrary qualities, are contrary one to the other, as fire to water and earth to air. Moreover, the elements are upon another account, opposite one to the other. For some are heavy as earth and water, and others are light as air and fire. Wherefore the Stoics called the former passives, but the latter actives. And yet again, Plato distinguisheth them after another manner, and assigns to every one of them three qualities, viz. To the fire, brightness, thinness, and motion, but to the earth, darkness, thickness, quietness. And according to these qualities, the elements of fire and earth are contrary. But the other elements borrow their qualities from these, so that air receives two qualities of the fire, thinness and motion, and one of the earth, viz. Darkness. In like manner, water receives two qualities of the earth, darkness and thickness, and one of fire, viz. Motion. But fire is twice more thin than air, thrice more movable, and 4 times more bright. And the air is twice more bright, thrice more thin, and 4 times more movable than water. Wherefore, water is twice more bright than earth, thrice more thin, and 4 times more movable. As, therefore, the fire is to the air, so air to the water, and water to the earth, and again, as the earth is to the water, so the water to the air, and the air to the fire. And this is the root and foundation of all bodies, natures, virtues, and wonderful works. And he which shall know these qualities of the elements and their mixotions shall easily bring to pass such things that are wonderful and astonishing, and shall be perfect in magic. Chapter 4. Of a threefold consideration of the elements. There are then, as we have said, 4 elements, without the perfect knowledge whereof we can effect nothing in magic. Now, each of them is threefold, so that the number of 4 may make up the number of 12. And by passing by the number of 7 into the number of 10, there may be a progress to the supreme unity, upon which all virtue and wonderful operations depends. Let's go ahead and check out this footnote. The numbers would seem to refer to the 7 planets, 12 zodiac signs, and the 10 Sephiroth, which may be manipulated in this way. I will go ahead and point out right now, as I more than likely will later on, if you are doing complicated mathematics, you're probably doing it wrong. I do not hold any value whatsoever to the gematria for a variety of reasons, mostly breaking down into it being completely arbitrary. This, as well, is completely arbitrary. We do, indeed, have 12 zodiac signs, but we are not alone in observing the sky, and other people have had both more and less zodiac signs. The signs of the zodiac are great significators of the change of the seasons, so that you can know when to plant and to harvest, and so it is natural to divide the year. But some people only divided the year by 4 different constellations. Some people did so by 24. This is a completely arbitrary designation. I believe that the planets and the stars may hold a little bit of influence over who you become, but they probably do so at the conception and much less so at birth. And so for me, astrology is quite arbitrary. I did a deep dive of it. You are welcome to check it out. But what I discovered at the very end of that is that my sign does not at all accord with what was actually in the sky on the day of my birth. And that is a major, major problem, right? I'm June the 7th, if you didn't know. Right, June the 7th, 1977 was my birthday. I was born in Zachary, Louisiana at 1:45 in the evening or in the morning, right? The sky, the sun was not in Gemini. I'm June 7th. That is dead in the middle of Gemini. And the sun was in Leo. That's a problem. All right, let's get back. Of the first order are the pure elements, which are neither compounded nor changed, nor admit of mixation, but are incorruptible, and not of which, but through which the virtues of all natural things are brought into act. That is going to be the primary elements, right? You cannot change helium, you cannot change hydrogen, oxygen, lead, except nowadays we have, right? We have, at least with bismuth and one other metal that I'm unsure of what it is. We have, through electromagnetic radiation, changed one element into another. It was an enormous power sink. The value was nowhere near the return, but it was something that we did. We absolutely did change one element into another through manipulation of the electromagnetics. That is a thing that is real. And so, for the most part, this is true, but it does have a caveat that nowadays we can actually change it. I'm not sure that we've actually done lead into gold, but we have done bismuth into gold. No man is able to declare their virtues because they can do all things upon all things. He which is ignorant of these shall never be able to bring to pass any wonderful matter. Of the second order are elements that are compounded, changeable, and impure, like water, yet such as may be by art reproduced to their pure simplicity, whose virtue, when they are thus reduced to their simplicity, doth above all things perfect all occult, and common operations of nature, and these are the foundation of the whole natural magic. Now, this is talking about the transfer of elements in the natural manner, right? When I light the fire, that is a natural change taking place. When I boil water, that is a natural change taking place. The water is separating into hydrogen and oxygen. And again, that was one of the first experiments. And so that's what he's talking about here. Elements that are compounded, changeable, and impure. Water, that is the best example. Of the third order are those elements which originally and of themselves are not elements, but are twice compounded, various, and changeable, one into another. They are the infallible medium and are therefore called middle nature or soul of the middle nature. Very few there are that understand the deep mysteries thereof. In them is, by means of certain numbers, degrees, and orders, the perfection of every effect in what thing soever, whether natural, celestial, or supercelestial. They are full of wonder and mysteries, and are operative, as in magic natural, so divine. For from these, through them, proceed the bindings, loosings, and transmutations of all things, the knowing and foretelling of things to come, also the driving forth of evil, and the gaining of good spirits. Now this is a little bit less clear, right? This seems to be something along the lines of a compounded spirit, not like a ghost or something like that, but like alcohol, right? You take the various elements and compound them together. That seems to be a fit, right? I'm not positive, but it seems to be a good fit. Originally themselves not elements, are twice compounded, various and changeable into one another. So alcohol does seem to be a fairly good example, right? You take water and sugar, create the alcohol through the addition of yeast, and that is a compound. You are compounding these things into something different. They are infallible medium, which means that they can carry something else, which again leads me towards the spirits, and are called the middle nature or the soul of the middle nature. That appears, at least to me, to be talking about the type of compounds that would be from chemical processes. Now, sodium hydrochloride would be an example of that, and hydrogen sulfide would be an example of that. But on the base level, alcohol seems to be a fairly good fit. Now, again, I could be completely wrong about that. I'm reading this for the first time. This is my first time with the information, so. Let no man, therefore, without these three sorts of elements and the knowledge thereof, be confident that he is able to work anything in the occult sciences of magic and nature. But whosoever shall know how to reduce those of one order into those of another, impure into pure, compounded into simple, and shall know how to understand distinctly the nature, virtue, and power of them in number, degrees, and order, without dividing the substance, he shall easily attain to the knowledge and perfect operation of all natural things and celestial secrets. I'm trying to think of how to place this and if it is a good spot, but maybe not. We'll try. We'll see if it'll fit in a different spot. Let's see what's next. All right, chapter 5 of the wonderful natures of fire and earth. There are two things, saith Hermes, viz. Fire and earth, which are sufficient for the operation of all wonderful things. The former is active, the latter passive. Fire, as says Dionysus, in all things and through all things, comes and goes away bright. It is, in all things, bright, and at the same time occult and unknown. When it is by itself, no other matter coming to it, in which it should manifest its proper action. It is boundless and invisible. Of itself, sufficient for every action that is proper to it, movable, yielding itself after a manner of to all things that come next to it. Renewing, guarding nature, enlightening, not comprehended by lights that are veiled over, clear, parted, leaping back, bending upwards, quick in motion, high, always raising motions, comprehending another, not comprehended itself, not standing in need of another, secretly increasing of itself, and manifesting its greatness to things that receive it. Active, powerful, invisibly present in all things at once. It will not be affronted or opposed, but, as it were in a way of revenge, it will reduce on a sudden things into obedience to itself. Incomprehensible, impalpable, and not lessened, most rich in all dispensations of self. Fire, as said Pliny, is the boundless, the mischievous part of the nature of things, it being a question whether it destroys or produceth most things. Once again, fire is the manifestation of spirit, right? It is the change enacted. And so these descriptions are not inaccurate, right? It's incomplete to me because it's not bringing in the Spirit as, right? The fire is the representation of the Logos, the very word of creation. And so this is all true about fire, but it's not the entirety of the notion. Fire itself is one and penetrates through all things, as say the Pythagoreans, also spread abroad in the heavens and shining, but in the infernal place straitened, dark, and tormenting. In the midway it partaketh both. Fire therefore in itself is one, but in that which receives it, manifold and in differing subjects, it is distributed in a different manner, as Cleanthes witnessed in Cicero. The fire within which we use is fetched out of other things. It is in stones, it is fetched out by the stroke of the steel. It is in the earth and makes that, after digging up, to smoke. It is in the water and heats springs and wells. It is in the depths of the sea and makes that, being tossed with winds, warm. It is in the air and it makes it, as we ofttimes see, to burn. And all animals and living things whatsoever, and all vegetables are preserved by heat, and everything that lives, lives by reason of the enclosed heat, or spirit. The properties of the fire that is above are heat, making all things fruitful and light, giving life to all things. The properties of the infernal fire are a parched heat, consuming all things in darkness, making all things barren. The celestial and bright fire drives away spirits of darkness, and this, our fire made with wood, drives away the same, inasmuch as it hath an analogy with, and is the vehiculum of that superior light, as also of him who saith, I am the light of the Father, which is true fire, the Father of lights. I am the light of the world. Did I say of the Father? I think I said of the Father. I am the light of the world, which is the true fire, the Father of lights. That would be the Spirit, not a person, from whom every good thing that is given comes, sending forth the light of the fire, and communicated it first to the sun and the rest of the celestial bodies, and by these, as by mediating instruments, conveying that light into our fire. As therefore the spirits of darkness are stronger in the dark, so good spirits, which are angels of light, are augmented, not only by that light which is divine, of the sun and celestial, but also by the light of our common fire. Hence it was that the first and most wise institutors of religions and ceremonies ordained that prayers, singings, and all manners of divine worship whatsoever should not be performed without lighted candles or torches. Hence also was that significant saying of Pythagoras, do not speak of God without a light. And they commanded that for the driving away of wicked spirits, lights and fires should be kindled on the corpses of the dead, and that they should not be removed until the expiations were after a holy manner performed and they buried. And the great Jehovah himself in the old law commanded that all of his sacrifices should be offered with fire, and that fire should always be burning upon the altar. That's not true. There are several sacrifices that were not consumed by fire. The very first of which that I can bring to mind was when the Israelites crossed the Jordan to begin their genocide of the peaceful peoples who lived there. There was a sacrifice required from them before they could take Jericho. Do you know what it was? Do you know what it was without looking it up? I can tell you what it was. All of the men had to cut off the tip of their penis and put it into a pile. And the pile was high. And then their God accepted their blood sacrifice with no fire and allowed them to go and kill the people of Jericho. That is a thing that happened. When David was seeking to get the kingship, he had to perform a similar, but more gruesome, performance upon other people. And there was no fire involved in that one either. And while there is indeed fire involved in a lot of the sacrifices, every single time that blood was involved, it was the wrong sacrifice. Sit on that for a minute. Fire should always be burning upon the altar, which custom the priests of the altar did always observe and keep amongst the Romans. Now the basis and foundation of all the elements is the earth, for that is the object, subject, and receptacle of all celestial rays and influences. In it are contained the seeds and seminal virtues of all things, and therefore it is said to be animal, vegetable, and mineral. It, being made fruitful by the other elements, and the heavens brings forth all things of itself. It receives the abundance of all things, and is, as it were, the first fountain, from whence all things spring. It is the center, foundation, and mother of all things. I say differently only because, right, I explain the Trinity here, right? In that moment of stasis, all of matter was created, and so, yes, earth was first. But there was nothing until fire made it, right? There was no water until fire compounded helium, hydrogen, and oxygen. There was no terrestrial earth until the forces of creation had used fire to combine the elements into the magma which everything else coalesced around. It simply did not happen without fire, and so I say that fire is first. That is a completely arbitrary designation, exactly the same as putting earth first. But I do so with the intention in mind that fire is a representation of the Holy Spirit of God Himself, right? He created all of the things, but they did absolutely nothing until He spoke. Take as much of it as you please. Separated, washed, depurated, subtilized. If you let it lie in the open air a little while, it will, being full and abounding with heavenly virtues of itself, bring forth plants, worms, and other living things, also stones and bright sparks of metal. All right, so that is kind of true, right? If you separate it, wash it, depurate it, and subtilize it, which means to burn it, then you have killed all of the things that are in it, right? You have killed all of the bacteria, all of the microbes, you killed all of the seeds that could have germinated. But if you set it out in the open air, germination will absolutely happen. You didn't remove anything real from it. You took out the organics, fine, whatever. There can be new organics. It does not, however, right, bring forth plants, worms, and other living things. That is simply not true. Also, stones and bright sparks of metal, while that can be contained within the earth, it does not create them. When you do this, right, it doesn't just randomly, you heat up this pile of clay that you picked up and it becomes gold because you set it outside, right? That does not happen. And so, while I understand where the misinterpretation of the actual physicality comes from, because science was brand new and not effective yet, this is completely untrue, right? This is just simply not a real thing. You can set the dirt out there, it will grow something, but that is because of the things in the atmosphere touching it, right? A seed lands in it, or a bug carries that over there. It does not of itself bring forth anything. Back to the text. In it are the great secrets. If at any time it shall be purified by the help of fire and reduced unto its simplicity by a convenient washing. It is the first matter of our creation and the truest medicine that can restore and preserve us. And that is where we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are going to save over the wonderful natures of water, air, and winds for the next part because we're getting close to an hour and I don't want to go too much over. So if you like what I'm doing over here, let me know. But let's do a wrap up, right? Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic, or a series of. I understand that I hold some unconventional beliefs, and I have a tendency to step on toes when I relay those. It is not intentional, but I do not apologize for it. My comments on the church are valid. I am here to discern what truth is contained in this book. Now, that is according to my discernment, which is not insignificant, but is not the discernment. There are things that I do not know. If I do not know, I will try to be clear. I don't know. Things that I do know emphatically, I will state emphatically. My theory of the divine, I state emphatically. It is speculation, right? It is all things divine are speculation. There is no one who can tell you with absolute authority anything about the divine. All of the things that we know about the divine are all speculative. Every bit of it. The things that I talk about emphatically are the things that I have actually done, right? I use the Spirit to heal me. That is something that I have done. And so if those mechanics are here, I will point them out. If the opposite of it is here and it is not obvious that it would work, I'm going to point that out. In the same way that I just pointed out that the earth is not going to just spontaneously produce anything. If you have cleansed it with fire, it's just not going to happen. You can make it happen, but it's not going to do it on its own. That's not true. In that exact same way, I'm going to be doing the entire rest of this book, right? Now, we may get into the appendices on this one. I'm not sure. We skipped a lot before we started this. If you want to go back to the original source material, the link is provided down below. There is a lot of introduction, a lot of background, a lot of commentary before we get to this. I decided, out of character, not to do those. Normally I do. Normally we read through all of that so we have a good understanding. Most of that is going to be explained as we go through, that we need. But other than that, it was just a very detailed life history, right? Some of the commentary can get a little wordy as well. I wanted to dive into the meat, and the meat is separating this works, this doesn't, this is true, this is not, this might be. That's what I am doing here. If you are happy with that, if you like that, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything that was said. Put it in the box down below. And if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me read or discuss in the manner that we are doing here, drop it in the box down below as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks. Consider joining for a membership or pick up a copy of my book where I teach you to do what I have done. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.